Hello and welcome to a glimpse inside my head. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I talk about lots of knitting, fiber, arts related things here. And today, now that we're more than halfway through 2025, I wanted to check in with y'all about my 2025 stash goals. I specifically set myself some targets around how much yarn in grams I wanted to keep in my stash and how I was going to get there. And spoiler alert, it has not been going great. So I just wanted to show where I am now, talk about what's kind of keeping me back, and maybe brainstorm some plans for the rest of the year. So I feel like it's going to be a very humbling video for me personally. Hopefully it's entertaining for you all. Hopefully it's relatable, or hopefully maybe it's not. Hopefully you're achieving your goals, but I do hope there's at least one person out there that can relate. I know there are. So I have my little computer here with a spreadsheet about my stash. I've got some yarn that is stressing me out that we can talk about. And I am already sort of starting to brainstorm about my yarn. So let's just get into it. So starting with where we're at with the stash. My goal for my stash by the end of the year was to have it below 5,000 grams. When I set that goal, my stash was 8,600 grams. And now my stash is 13,548 grams. So I've actually done my goal in the opposite. I added 5,000 grams to my stash. So great. Yeah, cool. I also set goals for myself around stash busting or around no buys. So I wanted to be on a yarn ban for 3 months, and then I wanted to do a 6-month yarn ban. I did 3 months, and then I was almost I made it 4 months total. And then the yarn ban was gone. Working at a yarn store or at a yarn dyer got the better of me, and pre-orders got the better of me. So now we're in a trying not to buy yarn, but also knowing I'm about to go to a fiber festival, and I've been doing a lot of designing and planning in which I need yarn to knit up design ideas. And so the goals have gone a little bit to the wayside as far as yarn bans, but I do want to get back on the wagon after flock. I don't think after I go to flock I want to buy any yarn for the rest of the year. We'll see if that is possible. But even when I was on a yarn ban and I wasn't buying yarn, I was still receiving yarn because of pre-orders that finally shipped out, sample knit compensation yarn. I do a lot of sample knitting, and a lot of the time the way I get paid for that is in yarn. And so I need to take yarn for that. And typically it's a sweater quantity of yarn. If I knit a sweater for a dyer, I get a sweater quantity back. And so that is also another thing that added to my stash even when I was on a yarn ban. So that is how we've ended up growing the stash by 5,000 grams. I didn't quite realize it was a 5,000 gram growth. That's like a lot. That was a little painful to see. My stash almost grew by almost 50% because I had 8,600 before, and now I have added a little under 5,000. So yeah, that means it's grown by almost half. That doesn't feel great. And so I now am looking at this spreadsheet so this morning I made this spreadsheet all about my yarn stash. I pulled all of the data from Ravelry. I love using Ravelry's stash function. I feel like it's really useful for me to be able to plug in how much yarn I used from a project, and it automatically updates my stash, yada yada. And then you can also export your stash information into its own spreadsheet to do your own calculations, which is how I found out that I have the 13,000 grams. And so when I found that out, I was immediately stressed, immediately oh God, that's so much, feeling anxious, feeling bad, feeling overwhelmed, because not only do I have 13,000 grams of yarn total, there are 125 entries in my stash. So that means I have 125 different entries, some of which are multi-skein in my stash. So that is also insane. 125 different yarns. Like, what am I doing? So I felt very overwhelmed. I still feel very overwhelmed by that fact. I did actually go in to my stash and kind of break it down into how I'm planning on using the yarn, based on, is it a sweater quantity? Do I have a plan to use it in a sweater? Is it a sock yarn that, it'll be socks one day? Do I have an accessory plan for it already, like a hat or a scarf? Is it part of the blanket that I'm working on? And so, I can pretend it's already knit up. And then is it something I'd like to destash? So I kind of went through and did that and felt a little better about my spreadsheet after, of like, okay, it's actually, I do have plans for a lot of the yarn in here, or can easily identify yarn that I don't need and I'm just holding on to. But still, it's a lot. So out of the 13,548 grams, 5,026 grams of that is in sweater quantities. So probably not all of that will end up being used in sweaters, but that is the amount of grams I have in my stash that I am planning to put towards sweaters. And, I might have some left over from that. That's how I've gotten a lot of the yarn that is stressful to me now, because it is left over from sweaters. But yes, so I have 5,026 grams of sweater yarn. That is 22 different entries. That doesn't mean I'm making 22 different sweaters. It means a lot of the time I'm using 2 different yarns to make one sweater. I think that I have like maybe 10 sweater plans in my stash right now, which is a lot of sweater plans. But a lot of them are design plans. And so I have like multiple, I try to have yarn for 2 samples of a design. And so therefore I have multiple sweater quantities of the same pattern in my stash to be able to do that. And a lot of the time when I'm sample knitting, the way that I use the sample knit yarn that I receive is to design a sweater. That's how I can kind of afford being a designer, a knitwear designer. And so the sweater quantity thing, it's a lot of sweaters. I should focus more on getting my own sweaters done instead of taking more sample knits, because I don't need more yarn coming into my stash. I think I should focus on sample knits that are paid. If I do want to do sample knits instead of sample knits that are paid in yarn, paid in cash, and focus on knitting the sweaters that I'm planning on knitting. So essentially, need to stop dilly-dallying on other projects, knitting things for other people and doing sample knits. I think I just need to kind of lock in on my own knitting plans, which I know that I've definitely said that on this channel before. But is it going to happen? No. I am a chronic people pleaser and do really love the process of sample knitting. I think that it's really enjoyable. It's interesting. I get to work with other designers. I also get to knit something and then don't have to think about how it fits into my life. Like, I love making sweaters. I love making socks. I love making things for myself. But sometimes it is nice to be like, I made this thing. Now I have no attachment to it. Like, I got the joy of making something, and now I don't have to feel guilty if I'm not wearing it enough in my mind. I don't have to like be stressed about it, because sometimes the sweaters that I've made for myself can kind of stress me out. The socks, never, because I wear them whenever I want. I'm doing yoga in them. I wear them around the house. Like, no attachment, no stress around the socks. But some of the sweaters I've made that are really nice, that are like more put together than my traditional style, I don't wear them all the time. And then I'm like, oh, should I have made this? Like, I feel guilty about it because I spent so much time and frankly a lot of money on yarn knitting it. And so it's kind of nice to sample knit and be like, okay, it's gone into the universe. Like, I don't have to worry about how much it's worn, anything like that. It's kind of out of my mind. And so I do love sample knitting, and I probably will continue to do it, but I think that I need to maybe back off a little bit. Again, maybe like say I can do like 1 or 2 a quarter instead of 1 or 2 a month. or we got to slow down on the sample knitting, so I'm getting less sweater quantities out of them, and so I have more time to make my own sweaters. My next category within my stash was socks. So I have 1,587 grams of sock yarn that I have identified and plan to use in socks. That means I could make about probably 20 pairs of socks from my stash. I use about 75 grams of yarn per sock, and so like per pair of socks, max 75. Sometimes I use 50. I really like a shorter heel or a shorter leg. I have a lower instep, so I don't make a very large gusset or a very large heel flap. So I think some of them would have to be scrappy, but I think I could get 20 pairs out of 1,500 grams of yarn of socks. So I need to stop buying individual skeins of yarn for socks, and I need to knit the socks I want. I do have a lot of plans with my sock yarn. Some of my sock yarn I don't have an identified plan with. It's just like when the moment strikes, and that feels better for me to have like, okay, this is going to be for a sock. I just don't know what sock yet. Like that is totally fine in my books for it to sit there for a while. I'm excited about the plans I have with the sock yarn that I have identified, but the rest of it, I think inspiration will come when it comes. And so not too worried about the sock yarn, but that is a lot of socks. And that does make me be like, okay, at Flock or at any yarn thing, I can buy max one sock set of yarn. Like that is all we can afford, or not afford, but like we're at capacity sock wise. So that's very interesting to know. My next category that I broke out was accessories. So this was yarn that I have set aside for specific accessories. Specifically, I had 2 plans for hats and 1 plan for a little scarf. And so I've removed that yarn from the rest of the yarn stash. Again, yarn that has a clear plan stresses me out less. I do want to get to these plans and make sure that I have the time to get to them. But for 2 socks and a little scarf, they'll get knit up when they get knit up. Like, I'm not too worried about that accessory category. And then I have a category for a blanket that I'm working on. I'm working on the triangulum blanket. I say working on, I've made 1 triangle, but I've done a lot of setting aside yarn for it. And so I know that I have 1,002 grams of yarn set aside for that blanket. And probably more, honestly. I think that the blanket's going to use a lot. It's going to be a 4 foot by 6 foot blanket in DK weight. And so it's definitely going to use up a lot of yarn and a lot of smaller quantities. I've made it so that each color, other than the main color, I need to have at least 36 grams of. So it's not like the perfect project for scrap busting, because there's still like 36 grams is still a lot of yarn. In a lot of, sock projects, I'll have like 25 left or something like that. And so I'm still left with a lot of yarn after it. So I think that I do need to search for another scrappy project. But at least 1,000 will go into this. And then maybe I look into like a little granny square or like crochet project to use up the very small bits and bobs I have that I don't know what to do with. I also, for this blanket, am specifically only wanting to use superwash yarn. I have a lot of superwash yarn in my stash, and I love non-superwash as well. That's my preferred yarn for sweaters, but I made the decision for that for a blanket, I wanted to focus on using up my sock extras, like leftover sock yarn, which is almost all superwash, and I want all of the yarn to be a similar fiber content. I don't want it to be like a mix of non-superwash and superwash, because then if it was all non-superwash, I'd block it, wash it that way. But if it's all superwash, that means that if I really need to, it's a blanket, it's going to be on my couch, my cats are going to sit on it. Sometimes, they have an upset stomach, or they're just furry, or I spill a lot of things. I'm probably going to drink beverages and eat under it. And so it is nice for a blanket to be able to put it in the machine, the washing machine. And so I'm only using superwash scraps for it, and they have to be at least 36 grams or more. So it's quite limited into actually what I can use. Like, it's still a scrappy project, but it doesn't totally feel scrappy because of the amount of limitations on it. I can't just like chuck yarn into it, you know? But still, 1,000 grams will hopefully go into that blanket. And then I have 765 grams of yarn that I marked as I'd be okay with destashing it. Whether that means like for some of it, I might just have to honestly like compost it. Can you compost yarn? It's non superwash yarn. I have to look into it more of what I can do with my yarn that is like in such small quantities that it's not worth donating. It's not worth giving to someone. Like, I don't want to throw it away, but like, this is 25 grams and it's just a tangled mess. And so, like, I'm not going to use it. I would feel terrible giving it to someone. I don't know. I don't know what I can do with that kind of yarn. If you know, if you like have experience with that, because I feel like this cannot be a uniquely me problem, let me know. But yeah, I set some yarn aside that I feel like is just such small quantities that it's not worth me keeping it. There's nothing I can do with it, and that it would be better off. Some of it's in larger quantities that I just don't want, and that maybe I could actually destash some of that, but some of it is like, I don't know what to do with this because there's no way I use it. It's such a small quantity. So yes. And then that leaves me with 4,872 grams of yarn that are not in one of these other categories. And so that is really eye-opening of where we are when it comes to yarn. So yeah, that's where we're sitting, or where I'm sitting with my stash of the amount of things I have, what's in it, and what's stressing me out about it. I wanted to talk about what's holding me back from actually getting to the sub 5,000 stash wise, and why my stash has grown so much. And I've talked about some of those things. As far as sample knitting brings in a lot of yarn, which overall, such a blessing to be able to sample knit and bring in yarn that I love and get to work with dyers I love. Like, it is really nice, and it's the way that I can afford the yarn I knit with, because I knit with a lot of hand-dyed yarn and that stuff's really expensive, and a lot of the time I don't have to pay for it because I've worked for it instead. And so I am so grateful that I'm able to do that and want to continue doing that. But it does take time away from my own knitting, which means my own personal stash is not decreasing in size. And then B means that my stash is also continuing to grow, because a lot of the time I'm paid in yarn. And so sample knitting, overall, love to get to do it. But when it comes to the stash, there are clear cons to sample knitting that I think for the rest of the year I really need to consider and be more considerate when I agree to a sample knit, because it takes up time, it adds to my stash, and adds to my stress in a lot of ways. Another thing that is really holding me back from achieving my goals when it comes to my stash is the fact that I work at a yarn dyer. I work at Explorer Knits, and I love getting to work there. And most days I do not come home with yarn. I've got to say, props to me. Most of the time I see a lot of pretty yarn every day, and I don't always bring it home. But sometimes I do. Sometimes I bring home some yarn, especially when we're dyeing boucle. A lot of boucle is a very fragile fiber, and it can snap. And when it snaps, we can't sell it. And so any of us can take it home. And I can't say no to free yarn. It's really hard for me to say no to free yarn. So I've brought home a lot of broken boucle. I've also brought home a lot of yarn that others have brought in. So I end up bringing home a lot of yarn that I don't need, but that I'm excited about and was free. So it's very hard to say no to free yarn. It's also very hard to sometimes see beautiful yarn all day and not take some home, especially when you feel a connection to it of like, oh, I watched this yarn be dyed, I rinsed this yarn, I was part of the process of this yarn coming to be. And so it does make it harder sometimes to resist yarn when it's around you all the time, you're connected to it, and it's either discounted or sometimes free. And so that is not helping me with my stash. And these sound like first world problems. They very much are. I know that these are things that are, I'm so lucky to have access to discounted luxury yarns. I'm so lucky to have coworkers that knit and bring in yarn they don't want, and I can do the same thing. It's overall like really amazing, but sometimes it can be a little stressful when I'm looking at keeping my stash lower, and there are just a lot of factors in the way of that. So I'm in no way saying like, oh, this sucks. Like I'm so grateful to be around it, but it is something that I really need to be cautious of, and that I'm calling out as what is making it harder for me to reduce my stash. The next thing that's holding me back from really reducing my stash at all is the fact that I have so many design plans, and I'm really excited by the idea of, or not the idea of, I have release patterns, by being a knitwear designer and coming up with ideas and knitting them and seeing them and getting to see like something go from my head to reality. Like that is so cool. And so I'm so grateful that I get to do that. Sometimes it adds to buying yarn that I will not immediately use because I'm buying something for a plan that I have 3 other plans before I'll achieve it, but I found the perfect yarn for it right now. Like I often do get inspired by a yarn. So I buy a yarn to knit something that I know I'm probably not going to knit up for a few months. And I think that that is probably part of the process of knitwear designing for a lot of people. I mean, yarn is the material you need to design. It is very nice to, when you're inspired, get something, get the yarn you want, have the plan, and then you probably have to wait a few months because you have other plans in the works. And so again, not a bad thing, not a bad reason to accumulate yarn, but it is definitely holding me back a little bit. And I definitely have like a lot of designs in mind at this point. Like most of the sweater quantities of yarn I've earmarked for my own knitwear designs. And so I do need to kind of press the brakes on how much I am bringing in for designing and focus on the design plans that I do have in front of me. So again, not a bad thing, but a thing that's happening. Next, the final thing that's holding me back within my stash is I know what to do with a sweater quantity of yarn. I know what to do with a sock quantity of yarn. Make a sweater, make socks. Like very easy, where you're like, okay, yeah, I have the amount of yarn I need to make a sweater. I just need to decide on which sweater and set the time aside to knit it. Easy peasy. I, though, have a lot of weird quantities of yarn in my stash, a lot of scraps left over from different sweaters, a lot of yarns that I bought earlier on when I didn't quite know what I was doing, and it isn't enough to make a sweater. It's not the right yarn for socks, or it's something someone else got me, and I'm super grateful they got it for me, but like they don't know what knitting it, like how much yarn you need to make certain things. So it's a weird quantity and a weird weight to really make anything, things like that. So those I feel like are just a like rock in my stash where it's like I can easily it's almost like I can easily chip away at all the marble of like easy sweater quantity, easy socks. Like I can chip away at all that, but then there's like, I don't know, just a big hunk of metal in the middle that it's like my little chisel's not going to chip away at it. So I don't know what to do with them. And it feels like a sizable part of my stash. And it's probably not actually a sizable part. It's just like takes up a lot of space in my mind because other things, like a sweater quantity that I have a defined plan for, almost doesn't feel like it's part of my stash because I'm like, no, it's just a sweater in waiting. Like it's just, it'll be a sweater very soon. It's the full quantity. Like maybe I'll change my mind on the plan. Maybe it'll take longer to knit up than I plan on it. But like it is a sweater in waiting because it is the exact yarn I need to make a sweater. Like, this is the exact quantity, the exact type. Like, I know that this will be a sweater at some point. When it is yarn that I don't exactly know what it can become, I don't like, it's a weird quantity, it's a weird base, the colors aren't totally my thing, then I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. And sometimes it is left over, sometimes it's brought in. So those are taking up a lot of space in my mind as well and kind of holding me back, making me less excited about stash busting as well. So those are what's holding me back, and they're very similar to what's stressing me out. What's stressing me out, I wrote down yarn that I don't know what to do with, the fact that my queue of plans is super long and I'm not really making as much progress as I'd like to, and a lot of the weird quantities of yarn I have. Yarn I don't know what to do with, and weird quantities we kind of just touched on. The long queue of plans I think really ties in to both designing for myself and sample knitting. The fact that I have so many different design plans, I have the yarn for them, I'm ready to start them, but I am continually sample knitting or continually working on other knitwear designs that take longer than like knitting a pattern that I like. An already released pattern is way shorter to knit than designing a sweater, because that's from scratch. There's a lot of going back, fixing things. There's just a lot more slow progress, as it should be, to make a good design. And so both designing and sample knitting are meaning that I feel like I'm never really making progress on reducing my stash because I'm kind of focused on other things. You know, sample knitting, it's not part of my stash. It's not for me, but I'm still spending my time on it. And then designing just takes longer. And so my queue of plans is kind of ever expanding with the yarn I have. Like, I'm pretty good about making plans with yarn that I have or yarn that I know I will have from sample knitting. Pretty good at that. So I'm not like adding random things to my queue that I can't knit without buying yarn typically. But I have a long queue of things that I'd like to make from my stash, and it's not going down because of sample knitting and designing. And so, yeah, that's stressing me out. I have specific yarn in front of me that's also stressing me out that we can talk about. I specifically like have as the first thing a hand spun yarn that I made. So I made this, spun it up, maybe it finished it like 2 months ago. It is my first hand spin on my handy little e-spinner, which is behind me. Oh, I'm also constantly spinning yarn and making new yarn. So I'm just like continually adding to it because I'm reducing my fiber stash, enjoying spinning, but then don't always know what to do with my own hand spun yarn because this one at least is a very small quantity. It's 75 grams and like I think under 100 meters of yarn. It's very inconsistent. This one might just stay as like an example of my first ever hand spun from my e-spinner. But it is kind of stressing me out of like, should I turn it into something? What could I do with it? I really don't know. So this is stressing me out. I have this yarn that's left over from a cardigan I just finished. This is an Explorer Knits yarn. It's their earthy sock base, so it's non-superwash. I can't really, I can't put it in a blanket. I can't make socks with it. So I don't know what it will become, but I've got a fair amount of it, and that it's beautiful yarn. So I'd like to come up with something nice to use it for, but I don't know what yet. Because it's like 75 grams of yarn. I've got this yarn, which I got 2 years ago, maybe. It's Harriet Fine, Juniper Moon Farms Harriet Fine. It is alpaca and polyamide. It's fingering weight, and it has 420 meters. So I don't know, can I make socks with alpaca and polyamide yarn? It's non-superwash alpaca, but then it has the nylon in it for strength. So maybe this could become socks. Maybe I destash it. I did mark it as something I destash just because I'm not quite sure what I want to do with it. And it's not quite my colors. I don't typically knit with like a sky blue like this. So that also kind of stresses me out of like, what am I doing with it? So we'll see. I also have 3 balls of Drops Wish in this mint color. kind of a weird quantity. It's a bulky weight yarn, and each of these only has 70 meters. So I have 210 meters of this yarn, which like it's a blown yarn. I like blown yarns. I really don't know what to do with this quantity. And again, this color is kind of odd for me. So I think that I'm going to destash this because it would be very low on the priority list of things to make. And I just don't know what I'd want to do with it. And it seems like someone could probably find something to do with 3 skeins of this. So we'll probably destash it. But again, just adding to the stress list. I also have 1 ball of Drops Air that looks like it's in bad shape, and that is because my cat has attacked it in the past. Drops Air, there's 150 meters in this one, so it's just a lighter weight version of Drops Wish. 1 skein. I use this to make a Sophie shawl, and this is leftover. What do I do with this much yarn? It's probably not a fully complete skein even. It's probably like 75% of a skein, and this is I think only 50 grams. Yeah, so it's probably like 30 grams of yarn. So I'm not sure what I do with it. Let me know if you have an idea or what you do with yarn like this, because you know it's not enough to like make a little scarf. It's not enough to make a hat. It's not enough to make a sweater, obviously. Like, it's a weird weight to put in a blanket. It's a weird, yeah, I don't know. So let me know if you have ideas, because I'm really not sure. I also have this yarn and these yarns, which are all bamboo blends from Lion Brand. These are both True Boo, and this is Kobu. So these are 100% bamboo. This one's cotton bamboo. This one is, I think, 100 grams. These were both 50 grams, and I've used both of them to make bandanas in the past. And I don't know what to do with the leftovers, and I don't know what to do with this one at all. I think that I'm going to destash this one, and these just feel like such a small quantity that I will probably again compost them. I mean, they're 100% bamboo, but with so they would break down naturally, but what would happen with the dye? Like, I have to do some research into this, because I don't know exactly what to do. But yes, I don't think I need to be holding on to these or this, because I don't think I'll make anything with it. It's also a very splitty yarn. When I knit with these, like, they are very splitty, and that can be frustrating. So I don't need that in my life at this moment. I think this will be the final main yarn I show you that's stressing me out, and this is Pearl Soho Good Wool. I got this a few years ago. I knit a sweater with it, and then I thought I was going to run out, so I bought 1 more skein. Did not run out, so then I just had 1 skein of a sport weight Highland wool yarn. That, like, what do you do with 1 skein of sport weight? I don't know. I did actually mark this as something I wanted to destash, but then when I was going through my stash with other things, this is a yarn that is also stressing me out that I don't know what to do with. This was actually a gift from my dad a while ago. He went to a farmer's market of some kind, and they had a stall of yarn. So this is from a local farm. It's Gentle Spirit Alpaca Farm in Wiggins, Colorado. It's 100% alpaca. It's spun there, and it's a 3-ply with 3 different colors. It's beautiful. It's sport weight, and there's 200 yards, which is about, it's weird. They do it by yardage, not by weight. And so the 200 yards was about like 80 grams. These are both the same weight, so maybe I could do something with the 2 of them. I have more of this than that, but maybe I could do something stripey, but I'm really not sure now. I think I'm gonna think on that a little bit, so maybe that could be something nice to do, but like, I don't know, kind of stressing me out. And then, okay, I'll show you one more thing that's stressing me out. This is also from Gentle Spirit Farms. This is 2 skeins of worsted weight, and they're both 200 yards. So I have 400 yards of worsted weight alpaca yarn. It's 100% alpaca. It's plied there. here's what it looks like. It's 2-ply. This is kind of a weird quantity to do something with for worsted weight. It's beautiful, and I love that it's 100% alpaca. I love that it's local. I love that it was a gift from my dad, but it's a weird quantity. 400 yards of worsted weight. Like, what can I realistically do with that? Because I wouldn't, like, I'd be like, oh, maybe I could make a t-shirt or something. But with worsted weight alpaca, I feel like it would be very warm. Maybe a shawl of some kind. So I'm gonna hold on to this longer, but it does kind of stress me out because I'm really not sure exactly what to make. I feel like probably the right answer is a shawl. But I don't know. Let me know if you have ideas, because I would love to turn this yarn into something beautiful. But it's going to be low on the priority list, and yeah, it's stressing me out a little right now, which is fine. But yeah. And then these stress me out less, but I did just want to show you the amount of scraps I have. These aren't all my scraps. These are like my very small scraps. So I have this whole little basket of fingering weight minis, this little yarn bowl of fingering weight scraps, and this little bowl of fingering weight scraps. So I have a lot of fingering weight scraps as well, which most of the time they're fine. I like kind of having a bunch of different little colors that I can use in color work for socks. I'm trying to lean more into using variegated yarn in color work socks as well, like having less intricate design so that I can use variegated yarn, and having like a solid color background has been really fun for me lately. And so that doesn't stress me out very much, but it is a large contributor of my stash. I have a entry in my Ravelry that's just fingering weight scraps, which includes all of that, all the minis, like all of that just goes in one listing, because it's so annoying to try to make like 50 different listings for very small quantities of yarn. And I have 700 grams of just fingering weight scraps for socks. And so I would really also like to reduce that, because that is a little bit excessive. So gosh, yeah, I think that's all I really have to say. Sorry, this video is probably a little bit more rambly, but I hope that you can relate to it, that it was enjoyable to see. I hope you understand a little bit more of me. This is kind of how I think about my stash. I have things that I really love and I'm excited about, and have been or am excited about all the yarn here. It's also just weird quantities or something. And so yeah, I'm trying to not beat myself up for the fact that my stash has grown this much. I really didn't think that it had, and I don't feel great about it. I love yarn. I love being able to have the yarn I do, but I also love, consuming at a more sustainable level. And so I would really like to go into flock knowing this is where my stash currently stands. I think that this will be very good for me going into a yarn festival to understand, like, this is what I currently have in yarn. Do I really need to add that much more? So I think that that will help me going into flock. And then for the rest of the year, I think this is a good reminder of, like, I have a lot. I don't need more, even though more is always fun. But I do really want to focus on actually knitting what I have and not bringing in more. So with that all, I think I'll leave you here. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your takeaways are, if you can relate, if you think I'm crazy, if you have more yarn, if you have less yarn than me. Both are completely valid. Like, I want to emphasize as well, like, this 1,300 grams or 13,000 grams of yarn stresses me out. If you have more than that and it does not stress you out, this video is not meant to make you feel bad about that or anything. Like, it's just my own consumption levels that I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel great. So thank you so much for being here. Please make me feel better or worse in the comments. Up to you, I guess. And with that, I will see you again soon. Okay, bye, happy knitting.